Welcome to Fireside Giants, a featured podcast by Empire Sports Media. I'm your host, Alexander Wilson, and my co-hosts, Anthony Rivardo and Mike Iarapino. Give us a follow on Twitter if you haven't already. Alex Wilson ESM, Anthony_Rivardo, and Mike_NYI. Also, smash that subscribe button on YouTube and leave a review on iTunes. We have a lot more content coming out, as always, and, we're trying to keep you guys updated through these, work-from-home situations and, with the coronavirus taking over, trying to give you guys all the updates and do the best we can. So how's everyone doing, Mike? Are you staying safe, staying out of trouble?
Yeah, I haven't been outside in 2 days. It kind of sucks, but eventually I'll be outside. I've just been playing basketball in Fortnite, so it's been kind of boring.
Inside?
Yeah.
What are you up to, Anthony? You going outside at all?
I went to the beach a couple days ago and got sea lice, so if you see me scratching myself like a dog, that's why.
What is sea lice?
I mean, I can't really even tell you. It's like these little microscopic things that get on your body, and because I forgot a towel when I went to the beach, so I kind of air dried, and I think that's probably how it happened. So now I've got these huge rashes all over my arms and legs, and they itch like crazy.
Is that a Florida thing?
Sucks. Yeah, I mean, Florida thing, probably.
All right, guys. Well, there's a lot to talk about with the Giants and the free agent signings. So many players to talk about. The first one I want to go over is James Bradberry, because he's probably the biggest one that we've seen so far. We know the Giants haven't really allocated much money towards significant pass rusher. Fowler just signed with the Falcons, so he's off the board. Vic Beasley's off the board with the Titans. Jadeveon Clowney, they're saying that they haven't actually found his market yet. They expected him to go in the 20 to 22 million range, but as of now, there's no report of him going anywhere, and they're trying to wait it out until eventually that price tag goes up and someone, bites on it. But for now, Bradberry is the biggest signing for the Giants, and he looks pretty good. We all, kind of wanted Byron Jones before they signed Bradberry, but looking over him, he's done a pretty good job for Carolina. I mean, he's familiar with Dave Gettleman, which is a big thing. He seems to bring in guys that are familiar with the coaching staff, which is like a lot of Patrick Graham and the Green Bay signings. There's a big trend going on there, which is why I'm kind of interested about Clinton Dix, and because he was previously on Green Bay. But Bradberry's interesting. What do you think, Mike? I mean, he looks like a number one corner, and you've done the research, and so has Anthony. So I want to hear what your perspective.
Yeah, he's close to a number one corner. I would call him a high-end number two. He does have some low moments, but he's a pretty solid player, 26 years old. We're giving him around $15 million per year, 32 guaranteed. So it's not the worst contract in the world. I was not really expecting this, although I probably should have, considering Gettleman drafted the guy, so that's my fault. But, he had a pretty good completion percentage against him for his career, 53.1%. That's not too bad. I saw him get beat occasionally on some deep balls against guys like A.J. Brown, Julio Jones, Mike Evans, these great wide receivers, and I tweeted about his matchups with Michael Thomas and Julio Jones, and who's the other one I'm forgetting? Michael Thomas, Julio Jones, and Mike Evans.
Not Mike Evans? Yeah, Mike Evans.
Faced them 6 times per year, basically, so that's very tough, and he held his own in most of those games. I'm sure we saw the stats against those guys, so he could be a very solid corner for this team, but I think a lot of it has to do with how good DeAndre Baker is next year. Does he take that next step? And if he's actually a good corner next year, we can have 2 solid corners on this team next year, which would be huge.
I agree. I mean, Anthony, what do you think about him?
So when I first saw the James Bradberry signing, the news of that, I was probably a little harsh on it, and I wasn't too happy about it, but that's mainly just because I really wanted Byron Jones. I've been very open that was my number one ranked free agent heading into this offseason, so I was super disappointed that we didn't land him. But I'm not super upset about the James Bradberry signing. I think it's good. I don't think he's an excellent lockdown number one cornerback, but I definitely think he's good, and he's an upgrade over anything that we currently had on the roster. So you can combine him with DeAndre Baker, and hopefully, the secondary will be much improved. And a lot of people do bring up those statistics of him guarding those top receivers, and I do have one counterpoint to that, why those stats don't exactly excite me very much, because if you look at the Panthers' schedule, and you'll see against the Saints, they lost 10-42 in Week 17, and that's why it was 2 targets and 0 receptions for Michael Thomas.
Right.
They're not throwing to Michael Thomas in a blowout.
Right.
Same thing with the Falcons in Week 14. Panthers lost 40-20. Julio Jones isn't getting the ball much in that game. And then 3-29, they lost to the Falcons in Week 11. So I think that those stats are a little bit misleading. I don't think they tell the full story, but I do think some of the games were close, and some of them he did do an excellent job, and you got to look at those and be impressed for sure.
Right. And I think you could make the argument, though, at the same time, losing 40-20 against the Falcons, like Julio Jones should have been involved in that game. Like the fact that he wasn't means the rest of the Panthers defense probably played like shit. And, Bradberry held his own. So you can see those individual performance standing out even in a big loss. 40 points is a lot. It's a lot of touchdowns, a lot of points there. And for Julio Jones not to be even a part of it at all, says a lot about that individual matchup. But as for his individual stats, I'm looking at it, 2018 to 2019, he took a big step down in that 1 year, but he still was a great player. It's actually interesting to see at 113 targets in 2018, a 44.2 completion percentage. That's like really impressive for 113 targets and a 5.4% missed tackle rate, which is not bad at all. He had 4 missed tackles on 70 combined. So we're looking at a player that took a step down because in 2019, he's 59.8% completion percentage over 97 targets and a 12.2 missed tackle rate. So something happened there where, I guess teams were targeting him more often in different route schemes. And, there has to be something that went on there. He also only allowed 1 touchdown compared to 6 in 2018. So he wasn't letting up touchdowns. So maybe they were targeting him more in the red zone in 2018. In 2019, they were, making targeting him more in the field of play before the red zone. So, those are interesting things to observe. But I think he's a good player for the Giants. He travels into the slot a lot. So the Giants, the Jets just signed Brian Poole, right, to a 1-year, $5 million deal. I know Mike's really upset about it, and I think that's reasonable. It's reasonable to be upset about that because that's a really good deal for a 1-year player. And Poole's a great slot corner to have on your team and your defense. But they're seeing this right now as Bradberry can move into the slot. He can shadow wide receiver 1 specifically, and follow them around. He's not much of a press corner, but he's good in zone. He reacts well. But he can man up with the best of them. We've seen him, shut down Michael Thomas, shut down Julio Jones in those, one-on-one matchups. So I like what I saw. Just like Anthony, I was really aggressive to jump on him negatively, just because it wasn't Byron Jones and we all kind of wanted him, which is reasonable. But after doing some research, Mike posting these awesome highlight videos on YouTube on our Fireside Giants channel. If you haven't seen it yet, go check it out. He shows the high and low lights. So it's really, really cool to see. That's the content that we really want to see, because we don't want to just see the best plays. We want to see his bad plays too, because that kind of gives us an idea of where he gets beat. So the next guy I want to move on to is Blake Martinez, and I know we have mixed emotions and feelings about him. Anthony, I want to start with you because I know you really don't like Blake Martinez, and I've seen some good and bad things. I wrote an article detailing some good things about him, but I want Anthony to dive into the bad things first.
Sure, but real quickly before I do that, I'm going to let you guys know, in case you don't have your Twitter notifications on, Leonard Floyd, that was a Giants target. He just got signed by the Rams, so we could scratch him off the list, unfortunately.
I'm happy about that.
I don't know. I kind of liked him.
I like what he represents. He's a lanky guy, but if you look at his numbers, I just tweeted this out the other day. He's worse numbers than Lorenzo Carter, and he plays in like double the amount of snaps. And like
got a good team around him too. That's for sure.
Exactly. When you have Khalil Mack on the other side of the defensive line being triple teamed, you should be winning one-on-one battles, and he only had like 4 sacks last year. With Khalil Mack and a good defensive line, I don't think it's worth investing in a player like that because they have a guy like Lorenzo Carter that played significantly less and had 4.5 sacks and more tackles and more quarterback hits. So it's like, I'm looking at the numbers here. Obviously, the film might say something else. But from a straight-up analytical perspective, I think Lorenzo Carter is probably better off just they're investing time in him and his development. That's my opinion.
I agree because I just saw that it was a 1-year, $13 million deal, and I think
that's excessive.
Yeah, that's way too much for Leonard Floyd. But anyway, let's get into Blake Martinez.
Million.
So, yeah, I was very upset about this signing. I saw it coming a mile away because I know our general manager loves to get run stuffers. All he wants is run stuffers, nobody who can play coverage. And that's exactly what Blake Martinez is. 83% completion rate in his coverage. That is so bad, it's not even funny. That's the exact same completion rate that Alec Ogletree had, so it's not even any bit of an upgrade in pass coverage. Only thing is with Blake Martinez is he racks up a ton of tackles, but like I said, he does that because he's in the right place at the right time for the wrong reasons. He's letting people catch the ball, gain 10, 15 yards, and then tackling them. And he's doing that frequently, and that's why he's gaining so many tackles. And if you look on Twitter, if you search Blake Martinez on Twitter and then click videos, you're just going to find like 10 minutes of videos of him making bad plays, missing tackles, hitting the wrong gaps, and getting toasted in coverage. And Packers fans are very happy to see him go. So I don't know how I could personally be excited as a Giants fan to get this Packers reject linebacker into the fold. It doesn't fix our problem of not being able to guard tight ends and running backs from the linebacker position. And it could mean maybe this is setting us up to go for Isaiah Simmons in the draft. But to me, I just think that Dave Gettleman thinks he's set up the linebacker position and he's going to go offensive tackle in the draft. And from the way that I see it, the linebacker position is still far from being set after the sign-in.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I wanted Corey Littleton, and people on Twitter have been arguing about who's the better player. To me, it's really not that close. I think Littleton
not close at all.
Yeah, exactly. He's pretty good. So, they only paid Littleton, $2 million more, and people bring up the state tax and whatnot, but then you have two Giants beat writers saying the Giants had little interest in Littleton in the first place. So I'm like, well, there's not really a point of making that argument if the Giants weren't interested. And,
it's ridiculous.
I see why they like Blake Martinez. He's durable. He's 26 and pretty smart player, I guess. Makes tackles, does miss some tackles, but like it just annoyed me because you had a better guy on the market who's also durable, the same age, and I have some numbers here. I tweeted this the other day. The missed tackle percentage for Littleton was 3.6% last year. Martinez was over 10%, so that's a big difference right there for an inside linebacker, and it's your number one job to make tackles. And then completions against him was 71% for Littleton and 83% for Martinez. And some people want to say he's as bad as Ogletree. I wouldn't really necessarily go there. I went back and watched a lot of Martinez. He was a little better in coverage than I thought he would be. I put a lot of that in the highlight video that I posted on this channel, so you can go ahead and check that out. But like, he wasn't as bad, but he's kind of like overrated. I'm not gonna lie, he's a bit of an overrated player, but at the same time, he's gonna come here and get a lot of tackles, hopefully be a defensive leader. He was at Stanford, which I'm sure the Giants love, and they seem to chase all these smart guys that go to these smarter schools. But yeah, he should be a solid player. We know what we're getting, but he's not gonna be what I thought Corey Littleton or even Isaiah Simmons would be.
Right. And like, this is the trend I mentioned before, right? Patrick Graham was the linebacker coach for Green Bay in 2018. He's very familiar with both Kyler Fackrell and Blake Martinez. So we can see why, they're diving after these players. They're smart. They, a guy like Martinez specifically, he's going to be their Mike linebacker. He's going to be the guy that soaks up tackles. In a 3-4 defense, they're not playing, inside linebacker. They're not playing like weak side and inside linebackers. They're really just having two linebackers. Sorry for the freaking phone going off in the background, but it's probably someone calling about. Probably, yeah, no. Who picks up their home phone anymore?
Yeah, no.
Do you guys do that? I don't even know I have one. I don't even know I have a home phone. But Blake Martinez is like an interesting guy, right? He collects some sacks, 3 sacks last year, 5 sacks in 2018. But he, like I said, he is that middle linebacker, going to soak up tackles. He doesn't take risks, which I really don't like about a linebacker, especially a guy like him who's supposed to be soaking up tackles. He doesn't take risks and plug holes like Ryan Connolly does. Ryan Connolly flies into running gaps and just like sacrifices himself. This guy is going to sit back. He's going to wait for players to come to him and soak up tackles. And I think here's what my theory is behind this. He can rush the passer a little bit, and I think they're going to kind of use him in that diverse way because he does get some sacks here and there. But they really want their defensive line to be stout in stopping the run. Dalvin Tomlinson had an incredible year last year, and no one really talks about that. Leonard Williams is a run-stopping genius, and that's why they re-signed him. And then you have Dexter Lawrence who's gonna take a step forward, or at least we hope so, in year 2. You have 3 guys who are going to stuff the run at a high level, right? They're not expecting a guy like Martinez to be coming up and making tackles because the defensive line is weak. They're expecting him to wait and see, and be patient for guys to break through if they do and clean up those plays. Just not let them get big gains, limit it to 5 to 7 yards. That's what they're expecting a guy like him to do, soak up those tackles, and that's why it leaves the opportunity for Isaiah Simmons wide open, because now you have to have another linebacker that can cover. Like you said, Anthony, Alec Ogletree and him have the same completion percentage, which is really scary. We're talking about a guy who allowed 62 completions on 74 targets. That's really, really, really bad. And they cannot expect him to be doing a lot of covering in 2020. So we have to assume that they're going to bring in a guy, and Simmons is that guy, to drop back in coverage and man up with tight ends and running backs in the flat. Like that's what he is very good at doing. So I see it. I see what you're saying, Anthony, and I agree. But I think they have a very specific role. Joe Judge is saying they want players to be able to have diverse roles. They want to plug different players in to different spots and have them do specific things, but they also want to build around their talents, right? Like that's the problem with Pat Shurmur last year. He tried to force people into his scheme instead of building around the player. And I think that's what they're going to try to do in 2020. At least that's what I hope.
Yeah. With that being said, I think they should have Martinez blitz a lot. I think I said this in one of the YouTube videos I did about him because his sack percentage last year was 10.7. So on 10.7% of his rushes to the quarterback, he was getting a sack, and then he had 5 sacks in 2018. So he's effective at it. I mean, I saw on his highlight film, he's just good at going through the gaps. Sometimes he's unblocked. Sometimes he has to run through a running back, which he definitely has the strength to do so, and he gets there. So if they want to blitz him a lot, I'm definitely all for that. But of course, the main concern is trying to guard these running backs and these fast tight ends and stuff like that, which I'm not sure he can really do at a high level.
Right, but nonetheless, let's move on to Kyler Fackrell because I know we have a lot of guys to get through. But we're looking at a guy in Kyler Fackrell that's also from Green Bay. Anthony, like, what do you think about him? And does that Marcus Golden kind of feel to him and the way they're kind of structuring this?
It almost has a Shaquille Barrett kind of feel to it. He's a guy who's played as a backup a lot. Yeah, but when he's gotten his chance to play, he's been impressive. Like in 2017, he started 2 games, got 3 sacks. He started 0 games in 2016 and got 2 sacks. But then in 2018, he started 7 games, so he saw his playing time go up a lot, and he got 10 and a half sacks.
That's a lot.
And then in 2019, he started 0 games again and only got 1 sack. So it kind of reminds me of Shaquille Barrett going into last offseason, how he was a guy who was stuck behind Von Miller and all these other great pass rushers, and then they got Bradley Chubb and replaced him, and then he walked to free agency, came to a new team, and had 19 sacks. I'm not saying Kyle Fackrell is going to have 19 sacks for us, but I'm saying he was stuck behind Preston and Zadarius Smith this year, so he barely played, and he barely saw the field, so he only got 1 sack, but when he saw good playing time with 7 starts in 2018, 10 and a half sacks, so he's clearly a productive player when he's on the field. And I think with our team, he's going to be on the field a lot more than he was with Green Bay, obviously. So he's one of those players that could totally be a sleeper to be like an excellent signing for the Giants this year, like a Marcus Golden or like a Shaquille Barrett was for the Buccaneers. I think that's his ceiling.
Yeah, I absolutely love this signing for the Giants. I had him going here based off my revised free agency plan once Ngakoue was tagged. And this is a guy who had 10.5 sacks in 2018. I don't know if you mentioned that, but 10.5 sacks. He had a 14.7% pressures on 191 pass rushing attempts last year, which is pretty darn good. And then we talk about Marcus Golden. A lot of people wanted him to return, but he had 60 pressures on 460 rushes, and then Fackrell had 28 pressures on 191. So I don't know the percentage of that in my head, but it sounds like Fackrell's a little bit better at getting to the quarterback, and watching his highlights and watching him on film, he's just a big guy. He's powerful, has some pretty good moves, has a good spin move. He can knock down the offensive tackle's hands, and just he knows how to get to the quarterback. That's what we need. He does miss some tackles. I mean, according to this website I'm looking at right now, he missed 14% last year, which is a lot, but his percentage of getting pressures and getting knockdowns and getting to the quarterback, which is the number one priority for this defense right now, who doesn't have an alpha edge rusher, it helps a lot. And they have O'Shane Ximines, who we hope is better next year. I think he will be. Lorenzo Carter is a good depth piece. He could be good. I'm not really sure what to expect from him next year, but I hope, for me, I'd rather have Fackrell on one side and have O'Shane Ximines on the other side as the starter.
Right. And, I'm looking at, his numbers from 2018, and it's really interesting because he had, 41 blitzes, and he had 10.5 sacks, 18 pressures, and 6 hurries. That's incredible. Like, really good numbers. And last season, so, just to give you an idea, in 2018, he played in 59% of defensive snaps. That dropped to 40% last year. So he didn't even play in half of the snaps. That 20% differential equated to 10 sacks. So you can see when he gets more reps, more time, he's getting more production. So I think we should actually see him play a significant amount in 2020. At this point, it doesn't really seem likely to me that they're going to re-sign Marcus Golden, because he could probably go in the $12 to $15 million range per season based on his year last year. So we'll see what happens. But this guy is really underrated. Really like what they're getting in him, and hopefully he can produce, because that's really what we need, a better pass rush. I think O'Shane Ximines is going to explode onto the scene. But the next guy on the list is Levine Toilolo. I love saying that name. He's going to cost $3.25 million for the Giants. What do you guys think about him? He's essentially a replacement for Rhett Ellison.
Well, that's
Anthony?
exactly what he is. He's just a replacement for Red Ellison, and I think they paid a pretty hefty sum to get him, but I think it's worth it because you do need somebody there to be your blocking tight end. Obviously, Evan Engram isn't going to be that player for you. And if you've looked at Levine Toilolo, he's 6'8", 268 pounds. It's like having another
The
offensive
Rock.
lineman out there. Yeah, he's a humongous person, and he's exactly what you need. I think it's a perfect replacement for Red Ellison.
Yeah, he's a guy who has experience. I mean, he's played on the Falcons, I think the Lions for 1 year, the Niners last year, 2 Super Bowl appearances, which is nice. A gigantic human, 6'8". I did not know he was that big, and pretty good blocker. I think missed on 2% of his blocks for rushing and pass blocking
That's great.
situations. So, yeah, it's not too bad. It's a little better than Red Ellison, so that's a bit of an improvement there, and I don't think the guy has an injury history from what I know. So, pretty solid sounding. He's your third-string tight end, and if something happens to Evan Engram, even Caden Smith, he's a guy that can step up to that tight end 2 role, has some receiving ability. I posted that in the highlight video. He does have some nice receptions and sometimes can make guys miss, and had a very nice stiff arm on Prince and Mukamara as well, so that was definitely nice to see.
I love it. And, last season he only played 18% of offensive snaps, but we can cough that up to George Kittle being an absolute beast. So, he has a purpose, right? He's coming in to stop the run. Like you said, he only missed on 2% of run blocking, attempts, I guess. So he's going to be that 6'8" beast on the end. They're going to be running a lot of 2 tight end sets. That's what, Pat Shurmur was trying to do. And the Giants are so used to doing, having, Evan Engram on one side and then a guy like Toilolo on the other, so they can kind of run that play action perfectly. Because, how do you tell if you have Evan Engram and Toilolo on the field at the same time? How are you going to tell if it's a run play or a pass play? We're going to see a lot of that, and I really am excited to see Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones get active in the play action. It's always worked for the Giants, and they just can't get it because Evan Engram gets injured or Rhett Ellison gets injured. There's always players missing, and I think finally, they're bringing in guys with really good health history, which is really important. Guys in that similar age range, 26 to 28 years old, with very good health, and that's all you can ask for. The best ability is availability, they say. So
Yeah,
the next player on the list.
Yeah.
I know, exactly.
Guys that miss games. It's a good thing, of course.
It's a really good thing. And that's where, leads us to David Mayo. And David Mayo was pretty good last year against the run. I kind of like him coming back. It's a really cheap deal. It's all of these deals, by the way, are very front-loaded in cap, right? So the idea here is they're changing their perspective and mentality towards signing free agents, and it's really, really good. The reason is in about 2 years, the cap space is going to jump up a lot, and that's what we're anticipating. So if they front load these contracts, the dead cap hit's going to be like a lot early on. In 2 or 3 years, they can cut the dead weight, the guys that didn't pan out, and have a ton of cap space to work with when the cap's increasing, and then they can sign. So the idea is like, they're rebuilding right now, and they want to take those gradual steps. So this year, let's say that the Giants are 8-8. Next year, they're 10-6, and then they have an opportunity to cut dead weight, sign a really good player, and then come in, in the next year in 2022, and have a really, really strong team with the chances at a Super Bowl. That's how they're looking at it. The reality of it may turn out way different. We don't know, obviously, and based on the past few years, it's hard to have the type of optimism we would like. But that's kind of where they're looking. If anyone's wondering why they're doing that. But as for David Mayo, what do you guys think? Is he more of a depth guy? It looks like he's kind of just a reserve option at this point.
Yeah, David Mayo, I think, is a solid depth piece. I like him a lot as your third linebacker. Hopefully, if it's going to be Simmons and Martinez, I think that's a really solid linebacking group. And then you have
Right.
Connolly, who's developing. He's coming off of an injury, so he's kind of a big question mark at this point. But I think he has potential to be a starter. And then I think David Mayo is just, if anybody gets hurt, David Mayo can fill in. I think Blake Martinez is a better version of David Mayo. Neither of them are very good in coverage, but their strength is run defense. And
Right.
so if Martinez were to go down with an injury, you have David Mayo to step in, and he can almost fill the role in a similar way. Not as well probably, but he still could fill that role as your run defending inside linebacker. And so I think that David Mayo actually does provide a lot of value with the Giants in terms of their depth, and I think it was a really excellent re-signing.
Yeah, he's not, he's the guy who's going to be a third or fourth string linebacker for this team. I think another Carolina connection, if I'm correct. So, it's another thing that's expected. And, he's a guy that we expected to be re-signed here, hopefully on not a big contract. And that's exactly what it was, not a big contract. So I was happy with it. There's really nothing special about him. Does pretty good against the run, but not really much in the passing game. So, he's a good depth option. And then you have, hopefully, maybe Isaiah Simmons and then Blake Martinez in front of him. And you go from there.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm looking at this free agency right now. The Giants have been pretty quiet today, right? And they have a huge void at pass rusher. It seems like they're going to be scheming a pass rush this year with a rotation of Fackrell, Oshane Ximines, Lorenzo Carter, and really hoping those interior guys get that push. One thing that is kind of developing in the NFL now is that secondary is becoming more important. And having like one elite pass rusher is sometimes what you need with good cornerbacks. So, that's kind of what we're looking at right now is the Giants don't have that elite pass rusher. And, whether they wait on it or not, I'm not exactly sure what they're going to do here. Maybe they hope they can get Chase Young. Maybe they know something that we don't. Maybe like those guys up front, Detroit and Washington want quarterbacks. Who knows? This is a position where the Giants can't go into 2020 not having a pass rush again. And Jadeveon Clowney's still on the market, but the Giants only have like $10 million left to spend. They can rework contracts, but like I said before, they're front-loading a lot of these deals. So their dead cap's going to be high unless they take a guy like Clowney and backload his deal. So that's the alternative option. It's going to be tough this next year to see how they manage a pass rush. I'm a little concerned. Anthony, what do you think they do here? Are they going to go out and sign or draft somebody?
I don't think they're going to be able to sign anybody. I think they're almost done in free agency. It doesn't look like they're going to have the money to afford a guy like Clowney. And at that point, you're in like the third tier of free agent pass rushers. And at that point, what is the point? You might as well just stick with what you have and scheme it up for a year and look to get somebody next year or in maybe the second, third round of this year's draft. I still have the dream that I refuse to let die that Chase Young is going to fall to the fourth pick, because quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3. So maybe that can happen, and then our defense is going to look significantly better. But I think our pass rush is going to be really bad again this year. I don't see any way that they can really find that X factor pass rusher at this point. They ran out of money really fast. I do wish that they made a run after one of these big name pass rushers rather than spending money on Blake Martinez. I've been pretty clear I'm not the biggest fan of that signing, and it's mainly just because I think the money could have been better spent elsewhere, and pass rusher is definitely one of those positions that I think it would have been better spent at. And I just think it's going to be another rough year where we're going to struggle to get to the quarterback, but at least now we do have Bradberry, and hopefully with an improved secondary it will make it not as bad.
Yeah, the Giants definitely still have issues at two very important positions when you look at positional value, one being edge rusher, one being left tackle, even right tackle if you want to put that in there as well. I know they have Nick Gates there, but still I don't really rely on him to be a starter next year. He could be, but we'll see. I think he's more of a bench option for now. But
he's more of a guard too.
They can fix one of those. I think they can draft a left tackle, of course, at number 4, maybe 5, 6 if they trade back, or they could take Isaiah Simmons, who isn't really an edge rusher, but they could maybe have Chase Young fall to them. Maybe they take Caleb on Chase on and just surprise us all. I really have no idea how they're going to address it, but I think for me, I still want the left tackle. I know I'd rather have Littleton, so it kind of makes me want Isaiah Simmons more now, but I think taking the left tackle is the right move, and then hopefully next offseason they can get that really good pass rusher. Of course, there's guys in round 2 they can target, Julian Okwara, Zach Bond, who you like, of course, and there's some guys in round 2 they could target, Terrell Lewis, who I like. So there's people out there that have high ceilings that they could get, and we'll see what happens. But I think the good news is they could address one of those main positions, being left tackle, outside linebacker, or pass rusher, and at least get one of those at the 4th overall pick.
Absolutely, and I'm a little concerned to be honest with you, because there is one position that's going to be left behind. I don't think Zach Bond is being drafted by the Giants. The reason being, Fackrell is literally a Zach Bond replica. That's they're exactly the same player. They kind of linebackers, but they can rush the passer well too, but they can also play that middling role. And with that being said, I still think that the Giants might decide to trade back if they can. I think that's an ideal scenario, because if they can trade back 1 or 2 spots, they can get an offensive tackle or Isaiah Simmons, package a few picks together, move up and get like a back end top offensive tackle. They're probably all going to
Chargers need
go.
one now, right? The Chargers.
That's what I'm saying. Right? Yeah, and it's a little concerning to me because I just don't see like if they get Simmons, we know for a fact offensive tackle and pass rusher is going to be a weakness, right? So that's why I really don't think Simmons is going to be the pick. I think like what Mike's been saying all along, offensive tackle is going to be the selection here, and then they're going to try and trade up and maybe get another guy, like Gross Matos or whatever from Penn State. You know, they could always trade up and get him later in the first round. They're going to have to get somebody to fill this role, but it's going to be really difficult for them because they don't know what's going to happen. Draft day is war. That night, especially with everything going on right now, it's going to be all virtual. So it's not as like in person, you know, it's going to be all virtual, everything over the phones, online, which is a little bit concerning because it's going to be different. And the Giants have two major holes, like you said, at left tackle. And, you know, they could always decide to cut Nate Solder. The new CBA indicates that you can spread dead cap over multiple years. So they can spread the dead cap, which I think Solder's was like $16.5 million this year or something crazy. They could spread it over 2 seasons if they wanted to. Because next year, his cap hit is like $20 million. But his dead cap hit's like $6 million. So if they spread it out, they can, you know, kind of work around it. Maybe they can move him to right tackle. I don't think they will. It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the coming weeks because they don't have much cap space left to sign free agents. So, and there's not, they're gonna, you know, they're kind of getting into that tier 2, tier 3 realm anyway. But the last few guys that they signed, I kind of want to skip over 2 of them, quickly just talk about them. Cody Core, $1.95 million, really good special teams guy. He's not going to play a factor as a wide receiver. So, you know, really good at special teams. Again, that's his role. That's what he's going to play, and I think that was a good retention there. Aldrick Rosas, $3.3 million. Struggled a lot last year. So having a bad kicker in the NFL is something that plagues teams really, really badly. But what do you guys think about Rosas? Just quickly, kind of go over him.
I think it was the right move. He's a Pro Bowl player. You know, we don't have many of those on the roster. I know he struggled last year, but a lot of that could be attributed to Zach Diassi playing through, I think, a broken wrist. So that was a problem there.
Sophomore
and if you look at Rosas on kickoffs, he still did a good job there. So and that provides value in its own right, and I think he'll bounce back this year with the field goals. I'm not that worried about it, so I'm happy that they extended him.
Yeah, I think it's just, I don't know if it's a confidence or a technique or whatever it is with Rosas, but we know he has it. I mean, he went like 25 for 26 2 years ago, whatever it was, missed 1 field goal because he was injured, and like the guy is phenomenal when he's on. I mean, we've seen kickers have bad seasons before. I think Chris Boswell was close to being cut by the Steelers a couple of years ago, came back, had a really nice year last year. I mean, really, if your name's other than Justin Tucker, you're going to have some rough seasons as a kicker. That's just how it is. So, I mean, unless you have that one guy who the Ravens have, you might have a rough year with kickers. And you know what? It was a year where the Giants went like 5-11, so it really doesn't matter too much, and or 4-12, whatever it was. So I think Rosas will come back next year. He'll be a lot better. I'm not too concerned about it. And if they have to sign someone, you know, as an undrafted free agent, if Rosas is not having good camp, then so be it. I feel like they'll find the right guy if they need to.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, on to the final guy that they retain, Mr. Leonard Williams. So this is one that, you know, we've talked a lot about over the past few months. They franchise tagged him at $16.1 million. That's a hefty price tag, especially for a guy that's an interior defensive lineman that has, I guess, minimal pass rush, but he was double-teamed 64% of the time in 2019, something to consider. Leonard Williams is interesting because they want to re-sign him to a longer deal, multi-years, $10 to $12 million per season, probably high guarantees to, try and keep his cap down. They can make a little bit more room that way once they rescind the tag and sign him to a multi-year deal. I think that's where they're going with it. But what do you guys think? Anthony, are you on board with Leonard Williams? I guess we have no choice now, but what do you think? Are you happy about it?
I mean, that's kind of it. We have no choice. I think $16 million is a lot to pay defensive tackle, but at this point it is what it is. In an ideal world, it would be a tag and trade situation. He was supposed to have a pretty competitive market if he were to hit free agency. So you got to think that maybe somebody would be willing to give up a third-round pick for him. But you never know. I think Dave Gettleman is like in love with Leonard Williams anyway. I don't think there's any chance he's going to let him go.
It's the afro.
Ever. Well, he does have pretty cool hair, I won't lie.
But he looks like a nice guy. He
does. He seems like a nice guy. I'm not hating on him. I just don't know it's the best allocation of resources for the Giants. I think that money could have definitely been spent on a pass rusher, an edge rusher, rather than a primary run-stuffing defensive tackle, and that's really just my issue with it. But he's here, and he's probably going to be here for a while. I assume they're going to extend him by the end of the offseason, so it is what it is.
I mean, 12 million's a lot to me. Or not 12 million, what is it, $16 million. That's what I wanted, $12 million, but now it's 16 for 1 year. The good news is you'll get him on another contract year if he plays through this, and he'll hopefully have high production next year. But seeing the trade this morning with Jarrell Casey for a 7th-round pick.
I saw that. That's crazy.
Like, what are we doing here? Like, I mean, I know Casey's like 5 years older, 4 years older, but the guy's been solid for half a decade. I mean, come on. But, whatever. It's a 3rd-round pick for him, and we can't get a long-term deal done right now. I hope it's a, $11 to $12 million per year type investment, but we'll just see. I mean, hopefully he plays this year at a high level. He'll get as much money as he possibly can, because I like when players get paid. They deserve it. Shout out to Eric Flowers getting $30 million, but,
No shout out to Eric Flowers.
Roll your eyes. Don't roll.
What do you mean? Shout out to Eric Flowers. He's like
never mind.
goes to Washington, and now he decides to be a good player. I guess it's not his fault though. It's not his fault because Jerry Reese really, drafted him to be left tackle. He was always projected as a guard, so that was really the coaching mistake.
Him at guard? Like that annoys me as well.
They moved him to right tackle instead. They're like, you're shit at left tackle. Let's try you at right tackle now. And he was like, dude, I'm just not good at tackle. I get it. I guess I'm happy for him because he revived his career, but he just always kind of looked like an asshole to me. He never like an asshole, he just seems like an asshole, like a cocky guy, like a little arrogant. I'm kind of disappointed that he's gone and playing well now. I don't like it when players do that for the Giants, but I am happy that players do deserve to get paid when they play well.
Apple went somewhere, the Raiders, right?
Did he?
Yeah, to the Raiders.
He's
gonna look. He's gonna. I feel like cornerbacks. I just love their jerseys. The Raiders jerseys. They like every player just looks so badass in the black and white. And now they're gonna have like a really nice, stadium too. And we still got MetLife. Do you guys like MetLife? MetLife sucks. If you've ever been.
Could be better.
I'm not the biggest fan of MetLife. I wish it wasn't a neutral thing. I wish it was possible for each team to have its own stadium because it's a lot more interactive that way. Plus, I think a dome would help in that cold weather.
Definitely, especially in East Rutherford.
Yeah, it's okay. It's nice. It could be better though, like Mike said.
I don't know if you're ever there. Like it's hard for like the noise to like reverberate inside the stadium. It's so like big. It's just like a big stadium. It's not like if you ever go to Dallas, like everyone's kind of looking down at the field. The field is kind of like below the level, so everyone's looking down into the stadium. Everyone's like all the noise is going into the middle of the field. But MetLife is so like expanded, and I don't know. I think on the bright side, when they do end up replacing the new, I guess it's relatively new at this point. Once they do end up replacing it, it'll probably be like a monster stadium. It'll be pretty cool. Yeah. But we'll see. That's a long ways down the road. But after going over these guys, I think. What are you guys grading the entire haul at? I'm probably going at like a B-, just because I don't really trust the defensive players they brought in. Like they're all like guys that have done well in the past at certain things, but they aren't like consistent in every category. And like that's kind of where I was looking at like guys like Littleton. They can come in and be consistent in every area and like be a good player all around. And now they have to hope that they play well in a system to their specialty, to their strength, and like sometimes that doesn't work.
Well, if we're grading it, it's kind of tough for me to do because if I'm grading just the players that we got, it's one thing, but if I'm grading it and comparing the contracts that they gave to contracts that other players received, it's worse because like we said, Martinez got $10 million and Littleton got under $12 million, so that definitely would push the grade down. And I also am waiting to see what happens with Vikings free safety Anthony Harris, because that's somebody that the Giants were reported to be interested in.
Tag,
they were interested in him before free agency began. Then he got franchise tagged. But then I saw a report yesterday from Ian Rappaport that the Vikings are going to look to trade him, and they're only looking for a mid to late round pick. So if the Giants can get him for a mid to late round pick, then the grade is going to go
That's
up
a big
significantly
deal.
for me. Yeah, I think that would be a hell of a deal for us. I think you can move Julian Love into slot cornerback in that scenario, and you have Anthony
like that.
Harris at free safety, Jabril Peppers at strong safety, Bradberry and DeAndre Baker on the outside, and I think
I'd be happy with that.
I think your secondary is just about set. So I think that's something that the Giants need to pounce on.
Yeah.
If they can get him for a 5th-round pick, I think you
I would
have
do
to
in
do
a second heartbeat. Anthony Harris is one of the best free safeties in the game.
Exactly.
He's a guy that will revolutionize the secondary. You know, right now we don't even have a free safety. They're gonna plug because like what do they do now? Right, we don't have a slot corner and we don't have a free safety, but Julian Love will fill one of those roles. We still have Grant Haley, so you know he's a good run stopping slot, but he's not really that great in coverage. So there is a void there. And I'm not comfortable plugging a late 3rd-round pick or 4th-round pick in as a starter at free safety. I'm not comfortable with it. And Julian Love didn't play that much last year. I don't trust him yet. You know, I don't trust him to be a starter at free safety or slot, to be honest with you. Like I think he needs more time to develop. And, you know, throwing him into that role, I'm okay with it, but I'm not the most optimistic person when it comes to, you know, him being a starter just yet. But they have to. Like, Anthony Harris is a great player. I think, you know, he'd be an awesome addition.
Yeah, I think Anthony Harris would be a home run, but I got to say, I do slightly disagree with you because I love Julian Love, man. I think he really impressed me last year. I'm ready to count on him as a starter. But go ahead, Mike.
No, I was gonna say I don't know why they mess around with Love so much. I'd rather see him at outside corner. I don't know what's with the slot and the safety. Like, he played outside in college. Like, why can't we just keep him there?
It's like a utility.
I mean, I know Bradberry's here now, but even last year they could have done it because Sam Beal, he was all right at best. So, like, why couldn't they give him an outside chance? I just don't get it. But we'll see. I'm definitely interested to see what Joe Judge and Patrick Graham and this whole defensive scheme does with Julian Love. He's a versatile player, of course, which they like. It could be slot, could be safety, could be outside corner. So every option's on the table, really.
Yep, that is a fact. But to finish up, I kind of want to go. We have a few mailbag questions I want to go through. Okay, so one of them, let's see, says, can we still get Jordan Jenkins, Jets outside linebacker? Jordan Jenkins is a decent player. I think he had 7 or 8 sacks last year. With Fackrell coming in, I don't see them going after Jenkins. His price tag's probably too much for the Giants to kind of go after at this point. But what do you think? Jenkins a possibility or no?
I think he's probably out of our price range.
Yeah. I don't know.
We're running out of money. That's the problem.
We have no money. We have $10 million left, and Gettleman we still have rookies to sign once they draft them, you know. And we also he wants to take $20 million that he's going to pull out of his ass into the season. You know, that money is not there anymore. Like, whatever he says to us is just think about the opposite, you know, because that's kind of what we're seeing right now. He literally said like 2 months ago or 3 months ago, everybody from the West to the East Coast knows that we need pass rush help. Anyone see any pass rush help? Because we just let go of Marcus Golden and we got Fackrell instead. That's it. You know, that's all we've seen. So, you know, whatever he says to the media, literally the opposite is going to happen.
I will
They might
say,
have tried for Clowney, but you never know. I mean, I don't know. If
I doubt it at this point. He's way too much. $20 million per season. We don't even have enough to sign my sister. It's crazy.
well, the report is that they did at least inquire about Clowney, but they got scared away by the price. So that's what happened there. But I will say I don't think this is going to happen, and it's not really a Dave Gettleman thing to happen. But he did make it a point they want to get a pass rusher, and they haven't yet. But they did franchise tag Leonard Williams. Maybe they could trade Leonard Williams and find a pass rusher that way in a tag and trade scenario. I know it's highly unlikely because, like we said, Gettleman loves Leonard Williams, but you know, Ngakwe's still out there on a franchise tag, and he's going to get traded soon. The Jaguars are trading like everybody for super cheap. I mean, they're getting 4th and 5th round picks,
and Houston too.
Yep. Well, Houston's just stupid. Jaguars are just having a fire sale.
Did you guys see what Bill O'Brien said to Hopkins?
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I think Hopkins said it wasn't true. I really hope it wasn't true. I don't
Michael
know.
Irvin said that Bill O'Brien said to DeAndre Hopkins that he was like Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
And doesn't want his baby mamas around.
And doesn't want his baby mamas around. Let all the baby mamas run free. Baby mamas are free too. This is a free country. Let them run. It's crazy. I don't understand.
Can't imagine hearing Bill O'Brien say that. Tell your baby mamas to leave DeAndre.
Well, the thing is, he's the GM. That's why I don't like this whole. Unless you're Bill Belichick, I don't like this whole. You know, you're the GM and head coach. It's very conflicting. because now your personal preferences are getting mixed up into signing players. Dude, DeAndre Hopkins is like one of the best wide receivers in the game, and like think about this. The Giants started their rebuild 2 years ago, right? So we're in the third year of their rebuild. Arizona had their first year last year, and they already looked, decent. They weren't great. They didn't look good by any means, but they were decent. And they just took a huge step forward with DeAndre Hopkins being added to that defense, and they have draft picks. It's going to be really scary because like we're going through a 4 or 5 year rebuild, and other teams like San Francisco and Baltimore, and now it looks like Arizona are expediting that entire process by half of what we're doing. And so think about that for a second, because Dave Gettleman, people are putting their faith in him, but he's taking twice as long to get things done as other teams. Twice as long.
As I said, I don't think it's getting done until Gettleman's gone. I'm sorry to be pessimistic, but that's just the way
But you're not wrong, though, because all these other teams are doing it in half the time.
Yeah.
Which is really concerning to me. Like, and we don't even know if the Giants are in the right place right now. We don't even know if they're going to be a good team next year. So if after this season they're bad, they got to get rid of Gettleman. Like, I'm done with the dinosaur bullshit. I'm done with the guys in the back room freaking typing away at their computers. I don't even know what they're doing at this point. The probabilities are all over the place. Like, the guys they're signing don't make much sense to me. Blake Martinez is trash in coverage, and he gets a lot of tackles, but also tackles are a misleading stat. He could fall on top of a guy at the end of a tackle, and it counts as one. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So,
Gettleman thinks it's 1980. Who cares about covering tight ends and running backs? We don't need that. I mean, who cares?
Well, on the bright side, Jason Witten's gone. He's out to the Raiders, too.
Yeah. That's
yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
I know we don't have to listen to his annoying-ass voice anymore, thank God. But, he's on Dallas. They got Blake Jarwin, who still managed to torch us last year. Remember Janoris Jenkins completely missing that tackle? He just kind of flailed his arm at him, alligator armed him. I always remember the bad plays.
There's been too many bad plays in recent years. It's hard to remember the good ones.
Yeah.
The only good ones I remember are Saquon Barkley's, honestly. Yep. His, power runs and just, hopping over players against the Eagles. I'll never forget those, but everything else is kind of just a blur of bad missed tackles and Curtis Riley angles. And
Curtis Riley.
I know. I think I actually had an interaction with him a few years ago. The thing is, nobody came to his defense, though. Usually, if a player says something back, everyone's like, "Oh!" But he was like, "Yo, you're stupid," and I was like, "No." Everyone was like, "Nah, Curtis, you can't win this one, buddy. Yeah. Your angles are bad, man. You just aren't good. That's what it is." And I think he went to the Raiders too, and he ended up not even playing that much. So it is what it is. But thank you for everyone listening to Fireside Giants. Does everyone have any last thoughts, Mike? Anything to say? Just to wrap up.
I'm pissed off that some of my players I wanted are getting good contracts, like Ted Karras for 1 year, $4 million. Brian Poole.
Yeah, that's crazy.
$5 million. I'll leave it at that. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Pessimistic.
I'll just say I think we could have done better in this free agency, but I am very happy that they're front loading the contracts because it allows them to. I mean, that's signaling that they're finally rebuilding. They're in the rebuild mode.
It's good for the next GM too.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. Yeah, right.
That Martinez contract.
Perfect.
That Martinez contract is technically only a 2-year deal because on the third year they can cut him with 0 dead cap. So I think that's smart. That's the way you want to do it. And you said that the rebuild started 3 years ago, and it should have, but it really only started a year ago once we drafted Jones, because the year before that we drafted a running back in number 2. That's not really a rebuilding move. So hopefully now we're finally getting into the rebuild mode, even though it might be too little too late for Dave Gettleman, but prayers up that Joe Judge can turn us around,
It blows my mind, just before my last thing to say, it blows my mind that Dave Gettleman can say, we're going to win while we rebuild. And then come back a year later saying, we couldn't do it. We could not win while we rebuild. He just wasted an entire year of my life, watching the Giants, and everyone's just forgets about that. He literally came back and said, we were wrong. We couldn't do it. And I'm sitting here dude, you just wasted, and he kept his job, and he just wasted an entire year of what could have been the start of a rebuild. So I'm really also pessimistic at this point, but hopeful because Naturally, I'm a positive person, but they're really stretching it now. They're really stretching the limits. But again, thank you guys all for listening. I hope everyone is happy, healthy, and safe. Make sure your elderly loved ones are being looked after during these trying times. We're here to make this a little bit easier for everybody. And, I know everyone's probably working from home, but we thank you guys so much for tuning in and being a part of this with us. And we'll have a ton more content coming out every day. So thank you, and thanks for tuning in for Fireside Giants. We'll see you next time.